5 days since the presidential race was called for Joe Biden, only a handful of Republican leaders have even come close to acknowledging that fact. While the rest, well, why don't you look for yourself?
Senator, have you congratulated Vice President Biden yet?
No.
Why not?
Not at all. Nothing to congratulate about.
The president wasn't defeated by huge numbers. In fact, he may not have been defeated at all.
In fact, he was defeated. And if 5 million plus isn't enough, how about a likely electoral vote total equal to Trump's in 2016, which he then called a landslide? Of course, the GOP's embrace of alternative facts, to use a loathsome Kellyanne Conway phrase, is nothing new, which is a big part of why the Lincoln Project was first founded. Named, of course, for Abraham Lincoln, who fought to keep the country united, the group of current and former high-profile Republicans came together with one main goal: stop Donald Trump and any senator who supported him from getting reelected. I'm joined now by Jennifer Horn. She's a Lincoln Project co-founder, former chair of the New Hampshire Republican Party. How are you, Jennifer?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Jim.
Sure. There's no doubt no one would question that the Lincoln Project ran brilliant ads. But can you make a compelling case that you actually made a difference? You helped defeat Donald Trump?
Sure, absolutely I can. You know, the Lincoln Project had a very narrow focus. We were looking at Republican and right-leaning independent voters to move across the line to vote for Joe Biden. We figured if we could move 3 or 4% of those voters, that we would be able to defeat Donald Trump. And what we've seen in the states where we played, which was most of the swing states, we were able to not just achieve that goal, but to exceed it. In some cases by doubling it. When you look at it, was 5%, 6%, 8%, I think more than that in 1 or 2 of our states. People who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 came across and voted for Joe Biden in 2020. And that was always our primary focus.
Well, as you know, you have a pretty high-profile person who disagrees with that. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted the following. She says, it's not too late for them to do the right thing. Lincoln Project should take the L and publicly pledge to give a lot of their fundraising to the people who actually made a big difference. By the way, you raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $67 million. Your Twitter response to it was, AOC is mad at us. QAnon Republicans are really mad at us. Donald Trump is really, really mad at us. Must be doing something right. Hashtag country over party. But how do you respond to the merits of the notion that the principal players in this election were the organizers who didn't have $67 million, who were moving voters of color, which almost always are the game changers for Democratic candidates?
An incredibly important and influential demographic in this election, and to your point, in all elections, no question about it. As well as Latino voters, and in this particular case, suburban women voters. And in our lane, we were targeting all of those people. And one of the things that we were able to do that I think was fairly unique in politics, at least up until now, is we produced over 100 ads. I want to say 150 ads. I don't know the exact number, and we were able to micro-target them almost county by county and message test them in advance so that when push came to shove and we're into the general election, we knew who our voters were, we knew what message was going to work with them, and we had the resources to execute that plan.
So on to Georgia. Obviously, those 2 races, 2 runoffs will decide who controls the Senate. I go to your website this morning. First thing you see is a full-screen pop-up on the ballot in Georgia, control the Senate, the endurance of Trumpism. You know, the latest narrative, Jennifer, as you know, is the reason all these GOP senators are embracing Donald Trump's democracy attacking campaign post-November 3rd is that they need him on board for the Republicans to win at least one of those races in Georgia. Do you buy that, or is there something else at play?
Well, I think it's not just that. I think that's absolutely part of it. Look at the Republicans in the Senate, especially those that we see being very openly embracing of this, foolish idea that there was some sort of widespread voter fraud. They're doing it for a lot of reasons. They're doing it to keep the president from being mad at them and mean to them on Twitter. They're doing it so that they can continue to raise money. I've lost track of how many texts I've gotten from the NRSC asking me for money in the last 24 hours. They're doing it so that they can keep that base of voters engaged, the most radical base of Trump supporters engaged in their effort. And frankly, all of it together, they're doing it so that they can grab onto and hold on to the power that they have at any cost, no matter what it means, no matter how they have to betray their own integrity, their party, or their country. And that's exactly what Republican leaders are doing right now by engaging in this voter fraud foolishness. It's dangerous. It doesn't just undermine democracy, Jim. It puts us in a dangerous position on the world stage, and they are enabling that.
By the way, as everybody knows, the only reason those Georgia races matter so much is because the expectations of a blue wave in the Senate obviously never materialized. You weighed in on a lot of those campaigns, including Susan Collins. Why were you less successful in the Senate races than you were in the presidential?
Well, for a couple of reasons, I think. We played early in Arizona and Colorado. We were able to kind of fuel what happened in those states. We were, happy with the outcomes there. But I think we probably spread our attention a little too thin in those races. I would suggest that, had we took about 15% of our resources and tried to play in a lot of races, we would have been better off narrowing that list of targets and focusing a greater amount of resource into fewer states, obviously.
Every time I'm about to talk to you, I
can tell you, Jim, we're going to play heavy in Georgia.
What does heavy mean?
Well, I can't give you a number, but we understand how important the outcome of both of those races are to the future of the republic. We're going to give it 100%.
I started to say every time you're about to be on or I read about the Lincoln Project, I think of this incredibly odd situation where you supported a Democratic candidate for president and a Democratic Senate that is going to advocate for policies that for much of your life, and I've known you for a long time, you would have opposed. You supported Joe Biden, who I believe, if he had been opposed by virtually any other Republican, you too would have opposed Joe Biden. So how do you reconcile those things?
Well, it's easy, Jim, because it's important to me that in everything I've ever done in politics, including the advocacy that I brought when I was the Republican chairman in New Hampshire, to put country first. Every decision I've ever made in politics, I have believed was doing what was best, not just for my party, but for my country, for the future of my children. And there is no question in this moment of time that the Republican Party has abandoned the idea that country matters more than party loyalty. And Donald Trump and his enablers in the Senate pose a direct threat to the strength and future of our republic. So voting for Joe Biden, who I have to say, when you look at him on this political spectrum that exists in Washington today, is a fairly moderate guy, was an easy choice. I believe Joe Biden cares more about the future of our country than he does necessarily about the future of his own party, and that's what. But
you don't think one-party domination of the House, the Senate, and the White House is a problem, considering your historical perspective?
Normally, I think that you'll see even the American people appreciate divided leadership. Having both parties have a the table. But people like Mitch McConnell and the Republicans who sit in the Senate today have proven that they're not interested in bringing leadership to the table. They've abandoned their oaths of office. And if we're going to rebuild the idea of a two-party system in our country, or leadership that listens to both sides, we have to get rid of those people who have enabled Donald Trump for the last 4 years first. The position.
So does that mean that post-Georgia, the Lincoln Project returns to your Republican roots and tries to rebuild the Republican Party? What do you do after Georgia? I'm serious. What do you do after Georgia?
Yeah, I know you're serious. Rebuilding the Republican Party belongs in the hands of those people who are currently leading the Republican Party. It is not a priority for us. We've always seen ourselves not as being pro or anti either party, but pro-democracy. And we've tried to be really clear about that when we talk about Trump and Trumpism. It's not an assault on the Republican Party. It's an assault on the country. It's an assault on democracy, on freedom, in the future of freedom. And so that's the lane we're going to continue to hold. And frankly, the Republicans in Washington for the last 5 days since this race has been called, and since, by the way, it has been indisputable that Joe Biden has won this race, Republicans in Washington have made it clear that they are going to continue to undermine democracy, undermine free and fair elections. And if we are going to defeat Trumpism, which is what our original stated goal was almost a year ago, those people who are going to be on the ballot in 2022 and 2024 still have to be confronted.
Jennifer Horn, good to see you as always. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Pleasure. Thank you, Jim.